live in a lobby in Freeport, Grand Bahamas, and I want to tell you guys all about the Bahamas. So drop in the Q&A, anything about the Bahamas, drop in the Q&A. I'm happy to share the tax implications, why I'm going to be moving here, why we're looking at investing here, just a number of reasons why this is an amazing opportunity. And again, apologies for the backdrop, but you guys have seen me go live for the last like 4.5 years at McDonald's, anywhere. So I know you guys will put up with it, and we'll do our best. If anyone could jump in the comments and let me know if you can actually hear me loud and clear. I don't know if the Wi-Fi is strong enough for you guys to actually see the video coming through. Hopefully it is. Fingers crossed. I don't see any comments yet, so it could be just a lag on my end that no comments have come through. But I wanted to share a little bit about what I shared in the Instagram story and live test I just did like 20 minutes ago, which seemed to be low quality but actually worked. So it looks like some comments are coming in. You can hear me good. Thank you. Appreciate the feedback there. We need that to know that we can keep going. So unfortunately, the quality is probably not the best, but we're making the best with what we have. We're actually in a resort right now in Freeport that unfortunately doesn't have the best Wi-Fi. I thought about going to a restaurant or a cafe or literally anywhere, like the realtor's office or something, but it was one of those things where we're like, you know what, we'll just do the best we can, and you guys are here for the content anyway, so I'll share. Some amazing things about Grand Bahamas that I love, and some amazing things that I think you would love too. If you're a Canadian and you're looking to reduce your tax burden, one, setting up an offshore bank account in the Bahamas is like, you need to do that, and a corporation. You can bleed your corporations to zero tax in Canada simply by charging consulting fees that you can write off in Canada and then move the income to the Bahamas completely tax-free. There is no income tax, no capital gains tax, no crypto tax, no passive income tax, no inheritance tax, no taxes at all. You don't even file a tax return. And that's the best thing of all, is the time investment of having to do annual tax time. I know March and April comes around every year, and I'm always in the position where I'm like, oh, I gotta get all my books together, I gotta make sure I have all my receipts together, I gotta, all that work that goes into that. Probably I spend 10% of my entire year just on accounting and bookkeeping and preparing for my tax returns. So the time savings alone is probably worth a couple $100,000 a year, and then there's zero tax. Whereas in Canada, we're looking at, if you withdraw from an active corp, you're looking at least 15, 20, 25% on top of what you're paid inside the corporation, which is another 15 to 27%. So you're looking at nearly 50% tax once you withdraw from your corporations in Canada. I'm not gonna talk about the political climate in Canada, but I can tell you that here, spending the week, I've seen that the locals are very friendly. There's 300 days a year of sunshine. We even left literally the car unlocked and had no issues. We've left the room unlocked at certain points, had no issues. Everyone's very friendly here, but I will say for those moving here wanting to invest that are Canadians, there's a real opportunity, I think, because of what happened with Hurricane Dorian, and then subsequently right after that, COVID. There was like no travel, and tourism was the #1 industry, followed then by finance and offshore banking. It is the third wealthiest country in North America, interestingly, so a huge haven for crypto investors, for folks who've accumulated a good real estate that exists on the islands here. There's over 700 islands. There's a few main islands that have more services and amenities and things. And that's why I've chosen Freeport, Grand Bahamas. That island has no property taxes at all, so that was a huge draw. It's also 60 nautical miles from Florida, so you could literally get on a ferry or a flight. The international airport's on that island as well. You can get on a flight and literally in 30 minutes for $50 you can be in Florida. You could literally work in Florida, in Miami, and commute Monday to Friday if you wanted to. That's how close it is. And that proximity makes it, in my opinion, the best tax haven in the world, followed by the fact that with tax residency, you also have the ability to travel 275 days a year. In the Cayman Islands, you can't do that. A lot of the tax havens require you to live there. In the Bahamas, you have to reside at least 90 days. And someone asked what's required from a foreign investment perspective to get residency. Well, one, you have to buy a house or make an investment. It used to be 500,000 USD. It's now 750,000 USD. The more you invest, the faster they expedite your application. But I've heard of people buying $200,000 houses and applying for a house residency permit, moving here and then getting tax residency. So you don't necessarily need to have that larger amount, but it definitely helps things and makes it easier. So that's something that I would sort of recommend for those looking to move here. It's definitely a move for those who have owned a property in Toronto or Vancouver or any of the major metropolitans in the last 5 to 10 years and have $1 million or $2 million or more. If you have more than that, there's no point even being in Canada. The tax environment, if you have $5 or $10 million, you're watching this, you need to immediately go over to the Bahamas, check things out. The investing climate is just, it's I've been looking all over markets in the United States, and after you factor in the tax implications and you factor in the cap rates, it's just so much more attractive here. Even long-term rentals here are over 1% rule, and that's amazing that you can literally have no property taxes, over 1% rule. And if you're worried about hurricanes that do happen occasionally here, you can just buy hurricane insurance, and it's a huge payout when that happens. You protect yourself, so there's no downside. Some investors I talked to even put it as far as saying like the hurricane was actually financially profitable for them with the insurance. So that's not something to worry about. I think what's important is that there's a lot of opportunity here. You're looking at 60-unit apartment buildings for like $2.5 million. You can buy properties for 300 to 500,000 USD. It's just a very, very attractive, environment to be in. And for me, not having to file tax returns, being so close to Florida, I would like to spend my time between the two. I might spend a week in Freeport, then go for the weekend to Florida and spend the week in Grand Bahamas again. Have no tax filing, no obligation to do any tax returns, no tax at all. You can invest in crypto and all different types of assets. And the real estate here is, because wages are so, like an average laborer here makes about $250 a week to $500 a week, depending how their skill level is. Because the labor is much more affordable, and because the hurricane decimated and COVID decimated the local tourist economy, there's so many resorts that are just shut down, that are like begging to be bought. So many properties that people are afraid of COVID, they're afraid to travel right now. And so they've decided, just to put the property up for sale for half. Literally, I saw listings from 2008, now at a quarter. Certain properties selling for a quarter of what they were then. And I think that's gonna come back in a big way. I plan, you guys know you've been following me and watching, I plan to build a little Canada type of community within this island. And I think that because of the no property tax and so much distress that's available, there is a workforce of skilled labor that can help rebuild this economy. If we brought in capital, we could build I think a little haven of expatriates from Canada and Europe and all over the world that would come and enjoy the beautiful waters, literally the nicest water I've ever seen. Florida was nothing in comparison. Okay, I got a whole bunch of questions I'm gonna try to answer. Island boy, 100%, I'm an island boy. But you can fly 30 minutes back to the mainland, like back to Florida. You can't say that of any other Caribbean place. You can't take a $50 flight. You can have your own private aircraft and go back and forth. You have your own boat, and we're talking 60 nautical miles. That's nothing. We're talking in a fast boat, like 2 hours, not even. That's not something you can have in any other country that I've been able to find, period. If you want to have that developed nation super close by and then pay no taxes. That's very, very interesting. You can still, there's so much opportunity here. So let me just do some Q&A here. Thank you for all the comments. Appreciate it. The audio's okay. Okay, good. Will says, finally catching a live stream. First time in weeks. Good to see you, Will. Thanks for joining. We're live here from the Bahamas with, unfortunately, shared internet at this resort lobby that's questionable. The internet here is actually amazing, and like in general, there are several companies you can get that are good. Starlink is an option too. So it's not like you could move here and not be able to work remotely. It's totally an option. If you have a Canadian business or you still have properties in Canada, you can manage that remotely, go back and forth. There's lots of options. That's probably what I'll do initially, is just travel back and forth. We've put some offers in now on some properties here, so I'm investing. It's happening on the island. I'll be investing and getting property. And it's just, I'll probably spend my summers in Canada still. I have family there. I'll just go and visit and stay with family and just go on vacation basically to Canada. It's still a great place. I just don't want to pay for the burden of the tax load that currently exists in Canada. Capital gains inclusion rates are going up from 50% to 75%. Tax rates are going from 54% to potentially 58% in Canada. There's talks right now about other ways to tax. You're paying insane property taxes. You're paying insane income taxes. They're increasing the capital gains taxes. They're talking about taxing your vehicle. They're talking about taxing your gas at 30-40% increased. Here on the island right now, because of what's happened, there's actually an exemption on bringing in and shipping in like construction materials, stuff to furnish your units. There's no duty at all, duty free. So you can get stuff on the island from Amazon or whatever, order to Florida where you have everything in Miami and West Palm Beach and whatever, and bring it over. And develop this area to become basically a little haven. So I want to create a little Citadel community or a sort of a little Canada community. And if you're not Canadian, you're watching this, you're still welcome to join. This is a financial independence, retire early, revitalization sort of mission statement. So if you're into that and you subscribe to that mission, we'd be happy to have you down here. And I think there's already between 5 and 10 people that have messaged me privately who are going to come. So if you want to stay tuned, ask any questions you have. I'm happy to share what I've experienced being here and just all the research I've done reading online about and talking to lawyers and talking to accountants. And I'm not an expert by any means, but I think there's so much opportunity here that it's at least worth looking into. Come and check it out and see that you can get the same house you get in Toronto for like literally 10% of the price. We're talking 6,000 and 8,000 square foot properties for under $400,000 and $500,000 USD. That's with no property tax, by the way. And because hydro rates are so expensive on the island, we're really interested in things like solar. So if you are watching this right now and you have a hookup to solar installations, wind power installation, we're really interested in those kind of projects too, to create sort of a green community where there's going to be a lot of green energy. And we could even talk about some of the interesting things about crypto mining. Once we have that amount of power, solar power coming on the roof, it's like, well, where do we use that? Currently, you can't sell it back to the grid, and the grid's charging between 400% and 500% more expensive hydro here. So that's a real opportunity, I think, down here to make 5 times the return you make in Canada on solar. And so that's really interesting to me. And if anyone has the expertise on that, I would love to have a chat on that opportunity as well. The whole, and that's a movement just in general across all the G7 nations. People are moving towards green energy, and there's a focus on that. And I think that there's a huge opportunity for that down here, with labor being, the labor markets down here are very available. There is a lot of available labor, and it's affordable labor. And because of what's happened with COVID and the restrictions, there's currently not a lot of import duties on certain renovation type products. So that opportunity exists. Okay, and I'd be happy to answer that question as well. I'm just gonna pick this one off because it's really relevant to what we're talking about. So what happens with hurricane season? So yeah, most people leave during the hurricane season. For the few months that it's hurricane season, you go back to Canada. You could leave 275 days a year and still be a tax resident in the Bahamas. If you don't spend more than 6 months in Canada, you spend less than 6 months in Canada, you are not taxed in Canada. Even though you keep your Canadian passport, I'll keep my Canadian citizenship. I love Canada, but I won't be a tax resident. I'll file an exit return in Canada. I will no longer be paying personal tax. I will dispose of my assets in Canada at fair market value or just sell them off. And then I will no longer be responsible for any tax in Canada. I do lose my health card, but if I ever, if the world ever ended and you wanted to move back to Canada, you can, no problem. And within a few weeks, you have your OHIP back again if you wanted to go that way. But I don't think that's going to be the way that it's going to go. I think more than likely, we're going to see an influx of investors who have, the real estate market now become multimillionaires, and they're like, hey, I don't want to pay $100,000 a year in tax. I don't even want to do a tax return. Like, it's just a pain in the ass to do all the bookkeeping. They're like, hey, I want to be free of that. I don't want to be around the winter. I want to escape the winter. Where can I go that's a tax haven that we can build this sort of warm, friendly community of expatriates and friends that we can work together to sort of build that ecosphere? This is the place to do it. I've been looking everywhere to find a place to do it. This is the island to do it. The no property taxes, just a number of economic factors coming together make it very affordable to do it here. And so I'm very intrigued by the opportunity, and I hope you guys are too. To answer your question about the hurricanes, yeah, most people travel during hurricane season. You can stay. Some houses are unaffected completely by the hurricane. So that's something that people do stay, and they stay closer inland. Maybe they get a place closer inland. If they're worried, certain areas don't flood at all, certain areas do, so you gotta avoid those parts of the island. The areas we're looking to invest in are very protected by the coral reef. And so this coral reef kind of around this part of the island protects the big waves and the flooding and whatnot. So there's certain areas you can actually invest to protect yourself against hurricanes. A lot of the properties I'm looking at are 25, 30 years old with the original roofs on them and not leaking. So that says something, right? It's been through, 2 at least massive hurricanes and about 6 other not as massive hurricanes. So you can see, over the years how the exposure has affected certain areas and certain islands in there's areas, they call it over the bridge here, and I can share with you guys all that I've learned about the local real estate economy and what are the good areas and what aren't. But they're building a lot of great new houses in there and people are buying them up, but they continue to flood and they get the roofs ripped off and they get, they're just not built the right way. And so concrete build structure is really, really important. When we're talking about solar and hurricanes, because I saw that question come up too, one of the challenges I think is how do you build a system that can withstand 100-mile-an-hour winds or 150-mile-an-hour winds? There are clips you can get and things like that to help secure it. And if they're bigger panels, I wouldn't see them, catching wind depending on how your roof is structured and the pitch of the roof. It'd be very possible to avoid any major damage. I see like clay tile roofs where like 1 or 2 tiles have ripped off, but the majority of the roof is withheld 200-mile-an-hour winds. So they're able to build, with hurricane windows and hurricane doors to protect against that. In the same way, I think there's probably, and I will defer to the experts in the solar space and the wind space, but there's probably opportunity for that. I think that there's, that's an untapped market here. There are some solar I've seen on houses, and there are some projects I've seen where it's being done, and the power company here, Canadian owned. Interestingly, the power company here on the island is actually Canadian owned. It's a private corporation, not government funded. So very interesting little plug for Canadians. And unfortunately, they're charging them through the nose. But I think solar would fix some of that, at least on a personal basis, on our own personal properties. We could be living no property taxes and potentially almost no utilities. And all of the island is on septic. Each have their own septic leaching systems. There's no sewer fees or anything. So you're very, very low cost of living, especially if you take a ferry once a month to Costco or once every few months and buy anything you need and bring it in. Individuals are allowed to bring in certain amounts. I think it's $500 or $1,000 a trip you can bring in. But people, you can work with people to get more if you need. There are definitely options for that. So Fred, I'll answer your question. So Fred says, what happened to the big house from last year? I have to watch back many videos. So Fred, yeah, so I have a beautiful estate in London on the west end of the city. It's, a beautiful amount of acreage. I back onto hundreds of acres of field and forest, and I front onto brand new developments. There's like all the eateries and the fancy posh condos going for $1 million. So I'm in a really unique location, and it's almost the perfect property. Unfortunately, it's located in Canada, and Canada has really gone through a political revolution, in my opinion, in the last year, as well as a tax revolution. And the tax revolution is less talked about, but coming and being shoved down our throats. On top of that, the real estate market, partly because we're at the highest inflation rates we've been at since 1989. So what's going to happen? Probably the same thing that happened in the late 80s and early 90s. Real estate went flat for 15 years in Canada. If you bought a house in 1991 in Toronto, by 2005 it was worth the same amount. Here now, we're talking houses in December, and by now February, they're up 15% in 3 months. That is not sustainable growth. And so to me, that was a red flag in the local economy. We're looking in London and looking at the employment stuff and looking at the immigration stuff and looking at everything in the real estate market. I'm like, you know what? It might not be the top, but it is definitely at an overvalued point relative to cash flow. And so I'm cashing out my entire Canadian real estate portfolio over the next 12 months. I've already cashed out more than half of it. My personal house, I will probably sell it too. Once I move to the Bahamas, it will be liquidated as well. I'm probably another year of wrapping up stuff in Canada, another year and a half of closing up projects that I have open, my business, a lot of things that I have going on that I need to wrap up. So it's a transition period for me. It's not going to be right away. I'll be spending my winters in the Bahamas initially and exploring and growing and developing those networks and connections and opportunities down here to pave the way for that exit. But it's very hard to just uproot immediately, right? But I've made the decision. That's what we're doing. Unfortunately, my dream house is in Canada. I love the property. I picked it up for 1.3. I figure the way the market's going right now, another year from now, it'll be worth almost $3 million. So 1.3 to 3 or 2.5, let's say, super conservatively, that's a full $1 million in appreciation. The market's insane, right? Like those numbers are not sustainable. And the $3 million for my property would buy me literally an entire subdivision here, a resort. So the money just goes so much further here. Really, it comes down to the fact that in the last year, my net worth has almost doubled again. Maybe not in the last year, maybe in the last 15 months. It continues to double. So maybe we'll say the last 2 years conservatively, it's doubled. And every time my net worth grows, the tax implication grows. And now I'm looking at, I'm forecasting out in Excel what it's going to look like in the next 5 years. And I'm like, geez, in the next 5 years, I'm going to be having potentially a 7-figure tax bill. And so it'll pay me 7 figures a year, and all that headache of filing and all the stress of the bookkeeping and all the risk of audits and the stress of all that, and just be able to relocate, still spend 5.5 months a year in Canada if I want to, vacationing there, or wherever, go to Europe, United States, you have that flexibility to still spend up to 6 months a year and have that, for those first world amenities, and then call home the Bahamas and build our own little expatriate community where we all stay at least 90 days, but hopefully a little bit more than that. And we build our own infrastructure, like I have so many nurses and doctors that follow me. Probably we'll be able to move down a doctor or a nurse. So we'll have maybe there's a medical piece or a dentist that follows me. We can set up our own, sort of community where we can refer each other and find out who the best dentists are, and et cetera and so forth, and build that sort of community. I think where we could sort of, create a utopian sort of tax-free haven. Okay. I'm gonna do some questions. Someone's question popped up, does it have to be continuous? No, even the 90 days isn't cumulative. So you could spend like a week in the Bahamas, leave, come back a week, leave, come back a week. I mean, like you literally just vacation here a bunch of times a year, and you get 90 days and you have a residence here, you're a tax resident. So that's very attractive for people bringing capital here who want to be headquartered with their corporation headquartered in the Bahamas, international banking with Canadian banks here. It makes it very, very attractive and easy to sort of do business, I think, especially if you're a writer or a YouTuber or a media guy, like Lenny Kravitz, and many other celebrities have moved to the Bahamas because the Canadian royalties that they're making on their music and their writing, it's considered tax-free as well in the Bahamas. So you could literally do business potentially in Canada, and talk to your accountant and figure it out. But there are ways you could definitely bring the income to the Bahamas, be located in the Bahamas, and still spend 275 days abroad. You can't do that anywhere else. In Canada, if you're gone, you have to reside in Canada 183 days a year or more to be considered a Canadian resident, have your OHIP card and all that. As soon as you leave and you're no longer in Canada, like you could do it in 1 month increments. You could go 1 month in Canada, 1 month Bahamas, 1 month Canada, 1 month Bahamas, all year round. So 6 months in Canada and 6 months in the Bahamas if you wanted to. There's lots of options, and that's the great thing about this country specifically is the visa program and the residency program is very favorable, especially if you have capital. You can buy your way in really easy. A lot of countries don't have that same accessibility. It's a lot harder to get the residency. Literally, one of you has to invest, say 500,000 USD in a property or in some sort of investment here, and then you can get by extension, your wife and all your kids, potentially any dependents, like if you have an older parent living with you, you can bring them with you, all under one application. So that's what I've been told. Obviously have a chat with local immigration lawyers and whatnot. There are still some taxes here. There's like a sales tax on certain goods and services. Most of it doesn't, but certain goods and services. There are a lot of duties typically when you're bringing things in, like a car. If it's not bonded to your corporation, if you have a bonded car, it's free to bring it in. There's no duty on it. But if you were to import a car that wasn't bonded, you didn't have a corp or anything open, then you would have to pay like between 60 and I think it's 80% duty on that car. Cars are really bad. Bonded gas is $3 a gallon. It's like 80 cents a liter. But unbonded gas is like $1 something, like $1.10 a liter, which we all know in Canada, it's like $1.80 a liter right now in Canada, and it's a crisis back home. We have an oil crisis, and it's just getting worse with the inflation. So it's, and some things are more affordable here. Real estate for sure, way more affordable. Yeah, I mean, let's just do the Q&A. I'll bang these questions out real quick. So Fred says, you file taxes in Canada and deduct from a small business corp for consultation to bring the 50K and no file in the Bahamas. So Fred, personally, you don't have to file at all. So there are no personal tax returns here. There's no tax season, nothing. You don't have to worry about that. There's no stress. You just get to enjoy your life 365. Even if you were to spend literally May to November in Canada, 6 months a year, you wouldn't be a tax resident in Canada. You'd be a Canadian citizen, you have a Canadian passport, probably a Canadian driver's license still, definitely the passport, but you wouldn't have an OHIP card and you wouldn't be filing any tax. You're not doing anything in Canada personally. I plan to cut ties personally. All my personal assets in Canada will be, I'll sell them off. I don't have any interest in filing Canadian tax returns. I would much rather have everything centrally located in the Bahamas. But corporately, I believe there's still returns. There are no corporate taxes at all, but you still have to file. I think it's a 1% fee to keep your corp open. So 1% of your income, I believe, double check with that, but 1% either your sales or your income is like just a flat fee every year to keep your corp open. So that's something that, it's interesting, I think at least, to look into that option. That's much better than paying, in Canada, you might be an active business up to 500,000 and get the small business deduction. Maybe you qualify, maybe you don't. If you're doing private lending, you don't qualify, right? Like There's certain businesses, real estate, passive ownership of real estate, again, doesn't qualify. You're looking at over 50% tax rate in your corporation for holding real estate and collecting passive income from real estate and lending. Those businesses, like if you're getting a 10% return, or let's say you're getting a 12% return, which is like fairly good, a 12% return on secured mortgages is paying after tax, like maybe you have some expenses associated with that, 5.9%. So is 5.9% after tax attractive? I can guarantee you get better than 5.9% return in the Bahamas, right? Like some of the banks are literally paying for you to hold USD in their account. At Scotiabank, they're paying between 6 and 10% interest just to keep it in a savings account with Scotiabank here. That's how eager they are to get the capital. And to locals, I believe they charge higher on their mortgages. Like for foreigners who come here and get the residency, I'm told that it's prime +1, prime +2, depending on the risk. Some people even get like prime +0.5, prime +1, if you're really wealthy. And so there's a lot of affordable lending here. A lot of the Caribbean countries don't have that level of stability in their real estate market that the Bahamas has. And again, the proximity to Florida and the US really does add to the value add, I think, of the value prop for the Bahamas. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you would ideally write, like if you had a corporation, just to answer your question, Fred, I think the idea would be you would invoice from your Bahamas Corp, and then you would be able to deduct that invoice from that company on your Canadian Corp, and you'd be able to reduce your tax liability. I don't plan to do a whole bunch of business in Canada. I'm looking more into Florida and other markets around the world, and specifically in the Bahamas, I'm very, very interested in investing, as well as moving into crypto. I think that crypto is really a big space to be pursued, only because it's, we're still early, and there's so many opportunities with nodes and with farming, and I plan to probably move my stock portfolio to that and make a way better return with no stress. Unfortunately, no matter where you go, if you're investing in US companies, US equities, there's a 15% flat withholding tax, I believe. So no matter what, you're gonna pay tax, at least 15%. Luckily, if you're a foreigner, you don't have to file a tax return. They just keep 15% of your return, which is way simpler than having to do the day trading and keep all the books with it. It's just simpler, I think, to headquarter in the Bahamas. But talk to your accountants and talk to your lawyer and figure out what's best for you. By the way, Fred, I really do appreciate your super chat. That's why I picked out your 2 questions. I appreciate the $5.50. I'm gonna put that towards good use here. I'll get a coconut on you. So thank you for the coconut water. We actually had coconut today. We cut one open. So, okay, next question. I'm gonna try to blast through some questions here. The Wi-Fi seems to be reasonably stable, so I've let the stream go longer. My battery is running out, so I'll do my best. Okay, so Dr. Bryce Banner says, at some point, if you could explain why Freeport over Nassau or somewhere else in the Bahamas. So for me, and again, like I looked at a bunch of the islands, and there's the family islands too, which are interesting, and there's many islands that are uninhabited for the most part too. They're literally just off-grid solar, and there's a lot of cool resorts and stuff, and I've seen all that stuff too. For me, the main draw for Freeport was, 1, they have 60 years of no property tax. 2, they're owned privately, which is very, very interesting, that like the government actually leased the island to the main port there, which is a corporation. So I thought that was an interesting piece, that there was more freedom and more, honestly, the property tax alone should be enough. Nassau and some of the main islands have insane property taxes. There is no property tax here. So that's right there, you're saving $500 a month, $1,000 a month. That could pay for health insurance if you're worried about health insurance, right? I think self-insuring makes more sense with a really high deductible in case like you end up hit by a car or something. That's the best way to go, and you can get that for a couple $100 a month in most cases. But there really is, I think, a number of other reasons. So 1, Freeport is super close. Freeport, the Grand Bahamas island, Grand Island, they call it the Grand Bahama Island. That island is really close to West Palm and Miami. So we're talking a really short boat ride versus a 4-hour boat ride from the other islands. So it's the closest island from the west tip of the island. You're talking 60 miles versus 200 miles. So it's a big difference in the more than 200. It might be 350 miles from the main area. And the flights, the international airport is headquartered in Freeport. So you can get really cheap flights for like $60 from Miami, boom, back and forth. And because there's so many flights and things, that's interesting too. Also the price points. Like here in Freeport, you have mega mansions for like $500,000 to $1 million. On Nassau, those are $10 million. If you're on Paradise Island in a really nice area, you're like $10 million for the same thing with property taxes, everything else. So there's nothing wrong with Nassau. it is for sure the capital of the Bahamas, and it's beautiful. Also, Nassau has the crime. That's where any of the violent stuff happens. That's where all the people get killed and hurt, and because there's 400,000 people on that island, and the eastern, I guess, half, and there's certain bad parts of the area where there's a lot of bad stuff happening. The good areas are well patrolled because, from what I hear from locals, the wealthy people pay off the police to ensure there's zero crime in those areas. But anyway, for me, there's just a number of advantages being closer to the United States. The affordability allows us to build sort of our own resort at like less than my net worth. And imagine when everyone else comes in and adds in their net worths, and we pool our resources, we could actually build our own little Canada. And we could do that in a more cost-effective manner with no property taxes and a number of other really key advantages. But the location for me and the international airport, direct flights to Canada was another big piece for me, whereas from Nassau, and also there's a direct ferry that goes back and forth. There is no direct ferry that goes from West Palm Beach or Miami, the Balearia Fast Ferry. That ferry, it only goes to Bimini and to Freeport. And also Freeport's the main port, so if you want to ship things in, that's the place to do it. You have to do a transfer or take there is no ferry that goes to Nassau right now. So there's some disadvantages. If you want to just fly by air, then Nassau could make sense. I think crime is another piece. There was no real violent crimes on this island. That was interesting to me. 50,000 people, a nice, it's got the small town vibe, but it has enough that there's a movie theater and like a Costco, basically, a grocery store, and a lot of things that are very interesting. Because it's the main port. So for me, this island stood out for a number of reasons, but proximity I think was the main one. No property taxes, cost efficiency. Yeah. So glad to answer that question for you. Fred says, geez, I leave for a few months and you sell and move. Holy. Must be bare in the housing market, you see. Yeah, so there's just so much opportunity here and not a lot of opportunity at home. I see people buying properties near Fanshawe College right now on MLS for $975,000 that sold for $300,000 2 years ago. So we're talking a triple in 3 years. Near Fanshawe specifically, overvalued. If you own a property near Fanshawe College in East London, sell it right now. They're renting for $2,500 a month, 5-bedroom house. These are shitty houses, not even nice. We're talking $500 a bedroom, $600 a bedroom, maybe. So maybe best case scenario, $3,000 a month. You're gonna have some vacancy, damage, etc., expenses. We're talking an expense. A $1 million property has a burn rate of $5,000 a month. So you're losing $2,000 to $3,000 a month, including mortgage paydown losses, like from a cash flow perspective. In what right mind? Like these investors coming from Brampton specifically, a lot of them were Brampton agents I was seeing, but all around Toronto. In what world does it make sense to buy a property for $1 million that's a piece of shit 5-bedroom that rents for $2,500 a month in London, Ontario, where there are literally areas in the city where you can pay $500,000 for the exact same thing? If you own any properties still there, liquidate them. I feel so bad. I liquidated all my properties for like $500,000-$600,000. They're now worth $975,000 in that area. That area specifically, right near Fanshawe College, sell, overvalued. Negative cash flow is a nightmare as rates creep up. They will, interest rates will come up. It's gonna happen. They have to stave off inflation. And when they do it, it's gonna correct the real estate market. At a minimum, prices will just be flat. We will not see any more new highs. So all these speculative investors, when you're losing $3,000 a month and now your property's underwater, what are you gonna do? You might walk on the property, you just sell it off, right? Like why would you lose $2,000 a month when there's no appreciation outlook? It's a totally different market in Canada. And there are still opportunities for value in Canada. Don't get me wrong. But I would say that there's so much more opportunity here. You could sell 2 shitty little 1,000-square-foot bungalows near Fanshawe College and buy a 50-unit resort here that cash flows 100 times better. So 100 years, like your entire life of managing properties near Fanshawe College would make you a year of here. So for me, that's a huge thing. I get that there's cons, and for people who are like, I don't trust the medical system here, whatever, like literally you just get like a private flight or get on a public flight and you're 30 minutes for any medical procedure on a plane. It's like you don't have to get medical care here if you don't like it. They do have some private facilities that are, I would never touch the public facilities here. I've heard really bad things. You might not come out the same way you went in. But the private facilities, not so bad. The medical treatment centers, there are some good doctors here. So it's not that this island, and this island is big enough that you have, there's the Bahamas University here, there's the hospital here, like a rather large hospital and several private medical centers. For me, this was about as small of an island as I was comfortable living on. And this is the second biggest island in all the Bahamas of the 700 islands. So not the biggest, obviously. The biggest has like 8 times the population, but or 7 times the population. So there's obviously that big difference there. But hey, thank you. Well, appreciate the super chat. I know it's only $2.79, but that's donating to the future crypto farm. So there's definitely opportunity to do that. If we built something on stilts that was hurricane proof, that had decent cooling, and then was all solar and wind, that'd be a really cool sustainable project that could basically print money into our wallets, tax-free in the Bahamas, by the way, because there's no crypto tax. So if you guys have been following, what's his name? I think it's Sam Bankman-Fried. He's a 29-year-old guy who was arbitraging Bitcoin, buying it on one exchange, selling it on another exchange. He created, I think, his FTS. Go follow him. He's a super down-to-earth, reasonable dude. But he has $23 billion. $23 billion at 29 years old. Just moved to Nassau in the Bahamas and is re-centralized, bringing. He's the youngest billionaire in the world. So there you go. We'll just correct him. He's the youngest billionaire in the world. I think he's the richest, youngest person in the world too. So there's no one his age ever that's been as wealthy as he's been. But he just moved to the Bahamas. Of course he moved his company to the Bahamas, his crypto exchange. So I think because he's one of the biggest players, and by the way, his net worth is like 7 times the annual GDP of the Bahamas. So a move like that has big implications. Him moving here and setting up his corporation here. They're starting an annual, in April, they're starting an annual crypto, what's it called, like a mastermind, a conference. That's gonna draw a lot of crypto investors in. And I see the future of the Bahamas being in the crypto space. And so that's another reason why in the next 10 years, I think Bahamas is gonna blow up in a big way as this capital, billions of capital, come here. And a lot of other countries that Canada and the United States are like, oh no, how do we pay for this huge deficit that we created through the pandemic? We need to tax every Canadian $200,000. That's what they need to do, is tax every Canadian around 200 grand just to get everything balanced and back to good. But when all the wealth really leaves Canada, because that's what's happening, and same with the US, it starts fleeing as the tax rates go up and they try to squeeze them, they leave and they put it into crypto and they get out. And then they try to tighten up on the crypto in those G7 nations. They say, hey, you can't escape, you can't take your money out. The Bahamas is gonna be open, and there's no tax on crypto right now. So I think it's another opportunity in a huge, huge way. I think the Bahamas will become one of the international hubs. We already have Miami branding itself as the crypto hub. You guys saw the stadium, is crypto.com. Miami's 70 miles away. So they're almost it's like a suburb. You're living in the suburbs of Miami, really. No joke, I spent 3 weeks in the West Palm Beach area. If you're in a close suburb of Miami, you're talking Pompano Beach, not even West Palm, close, Pompano Beach. If you're trying to get somewhere in the morning, at lunchtime, or at dinner time, or in the evening, it will take you 2 hours to get into Miami. I can fly into Miami in 30 minutes from the Bahamas. It's a 4 times better commute than living we're basically a suburb, a tax-free, beautiful island. That you could think of it that way. So 90 days a year you got to spend here to get the tax residency, and that's huge. I think that gives opportunity that really no other tax haven in the world offers. And I've looked at almost all the tax havens in the world. And for me, this checked enough of the boxes. And I think if you look a little deeper and you're a Canadian watching this, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer to move here. So really interesting opportunities. Let me try to do some of these. Let me try to get some of these questions answered. I'm gonna go from the bottom. Just hit some of these questions real quick. Will says it's gonna be Miami 2.0, I think, in terms of crypto. I think so too. It's still the Wild West here from a power perspective. If the Bahamas does, relocate and become, and it looks like one of the biggest exchanges and the biggest players, who has the largest personal net worth in the crypto space. I think he's the richest in the crypto. I think he's richer than Vitalik, who has the creator of ETH. I'm pretty sure he's wealthier than he is by several factor. And he's now called Bahamas the home, right? Someone like that with his net worth, in theory, could, just with his interest, because he's so young, he has so many philanthropic type of interests, he alone could double the value of the Bahamas. Just that one individual. And I think other people will come, myself included. You guys watch this, we're gonna come, and now's the opportunity. Right now, there isn't a lot of demand here. There's a lot of properties that people are kicking 50,000 off or 100,000 off. This is a really good opportunity to get into these properties at 50% off And that won't be the case when COVID subsides, when there's, there are not these crazy restrictions that exist that are holding people back from traveling right now. It's a lot of fear, and the fear only lasts so long. We're 2 years into this pandemic. At some point, people are going to accept that it's an endemic. We deal with it every cold and flu season, and at some point, it seems to be with each new variant that it's getting less and less severe too. So I'm bullish, hardcore bullish. I think you guys should be too. If you have any questions, shoot them in the bottom. Is ownership of real estate in the Bahamas limited by time? No, not at all. It's fee simple. You own the land forever. So it's not like a lease. You're not leasing the land. You actually own the land. Yeah. So that's good too. You actually do own the land. You're right. In certain areas, like somewhere like Spain, if you buy a property as a foreigner, it would last only 90 years. So not the case here. To my understanding, it's like buying a property in Canada. Again, buying a property in Canada, the government could seize it at any time. They could decide that they're going to take it back. Expropriation is when the Canadian government decides, hey, your house is close to a highway, we're going to take your house. This is how much we're giving you. Happens all the time in Toronto and in major areas as they develop. I think there's less of a risk of your real estate being seized here than in Canada, to be honest. I know some farmers that had some of their land expropriated. I had a property in London. When they were they were expanding the street, they expropriated the entire front of my property. Literally almost to like the front of my door on one of these rentals that I had. They just decided, the city came along and said, hey, we're gonna give you 40 grand. We're gonna take it was like 40 feet by 20 feet from your entire front yard. We're gonna take that. It's like, really? Anyway, so people think they own their property in Canada or the United States. No, expropriation is a real thing. But yeah, I mean, very, very nice that you can pass that down, no inheritance tax, continue to pass the properties on to your next generation and whatnot. And Bahamas is a beautiful place. Like, who doesn't want to come here and enjoy probably the nicest waters I've ever seen? We're in the winter here, and it's beautiful. I stayed in Florida for the last 2 months, and I'm telling you, there were days in Florida where it got to like 4 degrees. It was cold at night. It isn't the same here. It's much more moderate, much nicer. So from a, climate perspective, and even a safety perspective, I feel safer here than I felt in some of the areas in Florida, for sure, especially Miami. And in Orlando too, there's a lot of really rough areas. A lot of, it feels like third world in a lot of Florida. So it depends on where you are, right? There's good areas and bad areas. It's any place, there's good areas and bad areas, but I'm hugely bullish. So Brian asked about my stock portfolio. Yeah, you can move your stock portfolio. It's a lot simpler. As a foreign investor investing in US equities or Canadian equities, there is a withholding tax that the US IRS or the Canadian CRA would impose a holding tax. There is a slight holding tax, like I mentioned. It's depending on what you're investing in, and I think dividends are actually even worse. I think like 20% withholding tax. Like, don't quote me on that. Do your own research, but there is a withholding tax. So it's, it's something you have to pay if you want to get exposure to US equities and Canadian equities. It's better than the tax exposure if you're a resident. You don't have to file anything. You don't have to deal with the fact that you're not tracking on your trades in the same way. But yeah, I mean, for me, to get to a zero tax burden, I'd have to switch into trading different cryptos and getting involved in different businesses. I can sell books. I can do YouTube. I can do courses and masterminds, all that, selling to Canadians and Americans tax-free. So I probably will shift out of my stock portfolio and rotate into crypto. Obviously, if you're following me on Instagram, you know right now I'm down 7 figures on my stock portfolio. Over $1 million loss. I'm as bad now. I'm at the same cost base right now, the same net liquidation value on my portfolio as I was after Newegg, after this short squeeze. And I made that all back. I lost $1.5 million. I'm almost at that point again. This time I'm holding quality blue chip shit like PayPal, Facebook, like quality good names that are gonna come back. And I have like 50 positions that are all in mostly tech and growth, which has been hammered in the last 60 days. Yeah, it hurts. It hurts. I'll be holding. I'll be waiting. You know what? There's actually a good line of thought. My year end is coming up my corp. I might just dump all my positions, roll them all, and get into new positions for March 1st. So I'm still exposed to all these equity positions and lock in that $1 million loss and get a huge tax write-off from the CRA. So I'm probably gonna do that actually now that I'm thinking about it. I'm gonna close my positions out this week, lock in those losses, get half of it back at tax time. So get a nice $600,000 check back against other gains that I have. That's actually a really great idea. So yeah, I'll be shifting my stock portfolio. I love the stock game and I still will have a small stock portfolio. Probably what I'll do is go to Nassau, set up a private banking operation, give them my capital, get a huge line of credit from the Scotiabank Bahamas Bank, and then say, hey, I have a stock portfolio with you guys. Let's do some commercial lending, and let's increase those net loan to values. So they may be more interested in lending me 70% loan to value, 75% loan to value, because they have a little stock portfolio of mine. But it'll be less exposure to those markets, those US and Canadian markets, than I have now. For sure, I would shift. I'm spending in USD and BSD, which is the Bahamas dollar, is just pegged one to one with the US dollar. So now I need to spend and live in USD, so I need to start generating income in USD. I'm less interested in Canadian eligible dividends. I also have another portfolio, which is actually up like 20% year to date, that is the same size as my growth portfolio, but specifically focused on Canadian eligible dividends. That portfolio, yeah, I mean, I have no use for that portfolio if I'm not a Canadian tax filer anymore. So yeah, for sure, I would shift that portfolio into Canadian real estate down here, probably buy a resort. There's definitely opportunity for real estate, I think, down here, where I could take that, say $5 million in capital, whatever it is, and turn it into 10 or 15 really easily. So that's what I'm most attracted by. And the tax returns are just part of the equation, right? Like, God damn, there's a mosquito. I didn't get any mosquito bites the whole time I've been here. And there's a mosquito here flying by its light and just landed on my face. Welcome to the Bahamas. You know, there's lizards all over the place. But interestingly, unlike Florida, no alligators, there's no vicious snakes, no vicious animals at all, actually. All the wildlife here, from talking to locals, there's nothing really that's deadly other than sharks, and there's not even a lot of sharks. Not even something that really is an issue, like at New Smyrna Beach in Florida, just sort of, south of Daytona, about 45 minutes. That's the shark-infested capital, and people are surfing there because it's the surfing capital. It's not the same here. Like, it's actually safer, I would say, than Florida. So, thanks, Jonas. Jonas the only one who can really get away with that. No, you guys want to see where I am? I'll show you. I'm in the lobby at this resort. There was a timeshare. We went to this timeshare thing and we got a 7-night free vacation. So I'm going to be coming back here for another 8 days, 7 nights for free, because we endured, 90 minutes, I guess, of timeshare stuff. So nice little place. It's a really nice resort. Like, they have a boat here they take you out on. They've got a trapeze, they got paintball, they got archery here. They've got a kids zone with a nanny there. Yeah, I literally they went home for the day, and I just was like, I'm just gonna commandeer their entire desk over here and just do my stream. And you know what's a nice thing about the Bahamas? Another nice thing about the Bahamas, just like a small little aside. The hot tub closes at like 8 o'clock, and there's security that walk by and say, hey, you can't do that. But here, if you have like $2, $3, and you just say, hey, would you look out for me, to the security guy? Just a few bucks. They're gonna look out for you here. People are very driven by tips, and you can get a lot done for a couple of bucks that you can't get at home. At home, the guy's like a social justice warrior, and he's like, no, get out of the pool. And they're like, you're not gonna take any tips. Here, it's very common to have tips and to get a little more freedom. I can jump in the hot tub at midnight, you just pay a little money, you get it done. Yeah. Oh geez, so many questions. This might be the most questions I've ever had on a stream before. Oh, feels like. Okay, I'm gonna try and pick some. So I answered this question already, sort of, when I was explaining the residency. I believe it's 500,000 USD, but if you bought a property here and you renew and get an annual home ownership card, you can apply every single year and just get residency here by owning something. So you can buy a house for 150 grand, a mile back from the beach or something. It's a small 2-bedroom house, and you could apply for annual residency every year. It's a pain in the ass, you gotta apply every year, but then you'd have tax residency here. The easier way is just apply once and be done for 10 grand and just invest the 500,000 USD. They're talking about increasing it to 750. If you invest 1.5 million in the economy, you get instantaneous. They basically move mountains to get whatever you want done. So you can definitely buy citizenship quickly versus waiting months for them to get back to you. If you're making the transition from Canada, it's probably months anyway. You have to sell your properties in Canada, you have to make a plan and talk to your family and all that kind of stuff. So it's a process. And the more you spend, the faster the process could be. But if you're not in a rush, yeah, the Bahamas is interesting for someone who has, I think even less than 500,000. There are definitely opportunities here. Working here is difficult if you don't get the permanent residency. You have to be very careful. You can't really work here, is my understanding. So you've got to get citizenship if you want to work here. But if you're working on your Canadian corp, or you're working on, other stuff like remotely, or you buy a property here and you're just like investing and living off your investments, that's definitely something the Bahamas is all about. They want your capital. They're for that. They're not for you taking jobs. They want you to come here and create jobs and invest in the market, not come here and take jobs away. That said, like if you're a doctor, they probably need doctors here who are qualified. Or you're like a dentist, same thing. There's probably an opportunity to work for an existing firm here, and you can just get a residency permit that way. So there's a lot of people who move here to work in the port, in management. A lot of people work here to run the resorts in management as well. So you can also just get sponsored by a company and boom, you get residency. And by the way, no tax, which is huge. Like they'll pay you potentially like an 80 grand a year salary if you have a high white collar type of job. You're maybe in six figures and no tax, right? So that's huge. In Canada, the tax implications are, you lose half, right? So it's just not as interesting. And the lifestyle here, it's so much slower pace, and it's beautiful. It's different. The people are different. I think there's just in my opinion, it's better. But to each their own. You gotta come here and you gotta see it. Like once I have the resort here or something I bought, I'll entertain all you guys. We'll do a super promo. We'll bring you guys in. We'll do a mastermind or something, and I'll give you the whole lowdown. We'll have the attorneys set up so you can get the connection. It'll all be part of the package, the mastermind. I'll probably build something like that so it's easy for people. Because I know a lot of people are messaging me like, this is hard, I don't know what to do. I'm like, maybe I need to find the best attorneys. I've got to find some accountants in Canada and build a package and say, hey, you talk to this guy for a couple hours, talk to this guy for a couple appointments, and build the whole package so that it's simple and easy for you to move here. So that's something that I'll probably have to investigate to build a little Canada expatriate community here. And if you're not Canadian, by the way, you're also welcome. If you're into the financial independence, retirement lifestyle, if you got kids, if you don't have kids, there's a place for you here. If you've got the right mindset and you're a nice, friendly person who's not like some crazy murderer. Like obviously, don't reach out if you're that kind of person. What sort of investment opportunities you're looking at as JV? What sort of capital? So Taj, appreciate you watching. We're looking at some resorts, some bigger stuff. Like I'm looking at something that's in the $20 million range, which would have we're talking multi-millions in revenue every year. That's something that's very interesting to me, like an all-inclusive piece. I'm also looking at like small Airbnb properties that are 300 to 500,000 USD that have the potential to do a few $100s a night that would be great places for us to, stay in when we're here. And then the 200, I might be gone 200 days a year. Let's say I'm gone 200 days a year back to Canada and all around the world traveling. I can Airbnb it and it can, more than pay for itself since there's no property taxes. And if you were to go solar, the upkeep cost would be very, very low. Well, it's time for the beard again. Have you guys not noticed? I still got the beard. It's thin, but it's here. I just have it by choice. I kind of just, I don't mind it. It's pretty much blonde anyway, so you don't really see it on my face. I'll keep it until the stocks come back. Sure, why not? David says, love your show. Thank you, David. Appreciate the comments. Any area in the Bahamas? Yeah, so I've been talking about Freeport, Grand Bahama island, and the Grand Bahamas is just my favorite. It's the closest to Florida for a number of reasons. Go back in the stream, you can watch that little snippet about why specifically I chose this island over the all of the other islands that exist. It comes down to cost, and it comes down to proximity. Location and cost seem to be the biggest things for me. The no property tax and a number of other advantages specifically about this island. Hey, Lucas, right on, says, this gets me so fired up. I can't wait to move to the Bahamas. I wish I could do it sooner. Yes, more people like you, Lucas. There's lots of people just like you who are getting close to pulling the trigger and jumping out of the plane and getting on the parachute to financial independence. And I think this is one of the best places to do it because of the tax advantages, because of the fact that it's literally paradise. Even if it wasn't a tax haven, it's better than back home, especially in the winter. Yeah. Hey, thank you for the $7 super chat. Appreciate that. Badri says, good credit score. You have a fund of $30,000, 180K annual in Canada, lack of initial down payment. How can I get over this and buy a multifamily property in Canada? So it sounds like you have good income, so you'd be able to qualify for a mortgage. That's already giving you a huge advantage as a joint venture partner. So you might reach out to people in your local real estate markets that, wherever you're living now, if you want to invest in that market or whatever market you want to invest in, go to a local real estate investing meetup or join the Facebook groups and start posting there and say, hey, I have a great income. I can qualify with an A lender. But what I need is a partner who has the equity. Or say, hey, I have a deal, I need a partner, I can qualify for the mortgage. financing, a lot of people can't qualify. They've maxed out the number of mortgages they can get. And in Canada, multifamily space, the properties qualify on their own, but if you have good, strong income, that helps the corporation to qualify for better rates and better loan to values, and just in general helps you to qualify and helps them say yes. If you have, not a lot of capital, partner with someone who's got some capital. Like, capital's nothing now. Everyone in Vancouver and Toronto is a millionaire. Like, literally anyone who owns a house in Toronto or Vancouver in the last 3 years is at least having 1 million, maybe 2 million. So there's so much capital out there. It's everywhere. Everyone's got money. So your problem of you just needing money, if you can hammer down the deal acquisition piece, and because you have good income too, like a lot of people have a lot of money, but don't show a lot of income, right? They're doing, businesses that are capital gains in nature, or they're not showing a lot because their business, it's just building equity. Those people have a lot of access to equity, but can't qualify for a mortgage. So you could be the perfect JV partner. There's definitely opportunity for that, for sure, 100%. Down here as well, like, good income will help you qualify down here too, if you're interested in that. If you're interested in Canada, cool. Like, Canada's also an amazing, amazing place to live. I love Canada. It's just, I've become too wealthy for Canada, as well as, and I don't want to harp on this, but the political landscape, I think, in Canada, and I'm not a left-leaning kind of guy, I lean more center-right. I honestly think that Canada's kind of a bit washed up, and they have a huge reckoning incoming with the tax piece. So I'm exiting, right? But there's still opportunity in Canada for sure. And I appreciate a lot of you guys don't want to be down here. You just want to come on vacation or whatever. So happy to help answer as many questions as I can. I'm running out of battery though, so I gotta, at the 1 hour mark, I'm gonna cut it. Talking about nodes and crypto, I could kind of basically answer that question. The staking piece too is huge. Like, you can get nodes under Ethereum where basically you're staking your Ethereum, and you have to basically lease a piece of hardware to do the node farming and the staking. But you can stake Ethereum right now. And if you're bullish on Ethereum, by the way, I think Ethereum's trading at half price. Like, it's half price of what it was already. And I think that it's gonna be 4 times the current price. But beyond that, you can just buy Ethereum right now at current prices. You can stake it and make 20% annualized. Why would you ever do lending when you can buy Ethereum that's going to appreciate 400% in the next 3 years, almost guaranteed? Like, I would bet the shirt on my back that Ethereum's double the current price right now, and it's down 50%. I personally am invested in Ethereum. I like it, but you can literally stake and make 20% annualized while still having the appreciation on the coin. You're basically facilitating the trades. So when people send Ethereum, they pay a gas fee or they pay a fee. That's basically how you're going to get paid. You get a piece of that transaction. You basically become the bank. Right now, when you move money back and forth, the bank takes a $150 wire fee, whatever, it's a banking fees every month. But the $150 wire fee to move money, it's actually cheaper to move money in the crypto space right now. And it's going to get continually cheaper. And the fact that they can't freeze it, they can't, say, hey, we're going to block that wire, which I've had happen, by the way, between US and Canada. I sent a wire, it was like 8 days they froze it because they were thinking it was suspicious. Like, what? That doesn't happen in the crypto space. It's instant. So there's just, for a number of reasons, decentralized finance is the future. And I think the Bahamas is a great place. Miami is a great place already to be. If you're in the crypto space, it's a great place to be in the world. Canada seems to be really far behind. From a regulation perspective, they seem to be very anti-crypto. But I think that, forget having your money in a savings account, forget even lending, when you can, in the crypto space, have assets that can't be seized, that are appreciating in value. We're still really early, that are paying annualized 20% really safely. And you can there are tons of NFT projects you can invest in where you can get paid residuals. Like, you can rent out your NFTs and get residuals, or you can stake, and there's a whole bunch of nodes you can invest into that process transactions. And a lot of those pay like 1% a day. We're talking 365% annualized a year on some of these projects. You can't do that in the real estate space in the same way, right? So I think that there's an opportunity. For sure, I wouldn't put all my money in crypto. I'm not, there's always a chance that, it's why there's always a chance shit could go wrong, right? So you need to diversify. I like real estate as one of the buckets. I like equities. I like investing in private businesses specifically because I can control that. Whereas you can't control the public equity markets. I'm down $1 million right now, right? And I have no control. I have to wait for PayPal to go from $100 a share to $300. I have to wait for Facebook to go from $200 a share back to $350. It'll happen. I mean, Facebook's trading an amazing PE ratio right now, and I'm happy that I was assigned that company, right? And a number of other companies that I have recently been assigned. I'm holding those equities because I believe there's value there. It's trading undervalued in my opinion right now. So anyway, I don't want to get on a tangent, but I think that diversification is important. So yes, it should be one of the major buckets that you're considering now. And this comes from someone who in 2017, when Bitcoin was at 19,000 a token, and it then subsequently crashed to $3,000 a token, I wrote an article on my blog about how much I didn't like Bitcoin, how much I didn't like crypto. That's changed. A lot of the things that I was concerned about have been addressed. And so you can go back and check out those videos I've done from 4 years ago, 5 years ago. A lot of my concerns are no longer. And to be honest, a lot of the pressure that crypto was relieving wasn't as severe and acute as it is now. The pressure that the government can freeze bank accounts, or the fact that the tax rates are rising globally, it's just, there wasn't the same pressure and fear, like literally fear that the government tomorrow could seize accounts in major developed nations. It's scary. It's, crypto is definitely an asset class. I think even if you don't believe in any of that stuff and you believe in the Canadian government and you love it and you love the Canadian banking system and you're like, Canadian banks are awesome, whatever, and I love centralized finance, even still, it's an asset class that should be in your portfolio. It's now becoming a part of the large hedge funds, and a lot of the big players in the space are building out equity portfolios that have exposure to crypto now. It is too big to fail, and the network is too large, and the use cases are just too strong to ignore now. And there's just so much money to be made in the space. As you know, there'll be lots of projects that aren't great, but if you're diversified in the crypto space, you're involved in 50 or 100 different projects, especially the big players like Bitcoin as an example, I think you'll be just fine. And I think you should have that exposure in your portfolio. What are the real estate commissions? So Luke asked what the real estate commissions are like. It varies between 4 and 8% on a transaction here. So yeah, I mean, realtors are paid well here too, for sure. Is the electricity rate cheap? No, electricity is like 700%. It's a Canadian corporation selling it back to people here, and it's very, very expensive. So that's why I talked about the wind and the solar and the sustainability piece. I've actually been wanting to do that in Canada, but the price of hydro is so cheap in Ontario that it hasn't really made financial sense. Here, it makes financial sense to do a green project. So I'm very interested in that in general. What are some of the unexpected things you learned? I like that. Oh, battery's almost out. 10% battery. What are some of the unexpected things from your trip to the Bahamas? Has your bullishness on the strategy only gotten stronger since your trip? So, way stronger. I went in with a lot of reservations around safety. I wasn't sure how I would like the culture. I wasn't sure about the weather here with the hurricanes and things. A number of issues I wasn't sure about. Having been here, I feel more comfortable. I feel more bullish about the investment opportunities. It's better than I expected. I found some opportunities to buy properties that you can't find these kinds of opportunities in Canada. Like, people don't sell properties for half price. It just doesn't happen, right? Like, imagine a wholesaler down here. You could knock doors here, you get resorts for 30, 40% off. You could easily lock up a whole bunch of properties and assign them to people back in Canada and bring a whole bunch of capital here. It's part of the strategy there's just so much opportunity here, and the more I read and the more I learn and the more I think about it, the more I'm attracted to making this a little Canada. Brian, great question. They have a few fantastic private schools. They have a really good Catholic one, and they have an amazing international school in Lucaya that's actually really well known. And there's been a few people I talked to. Someone moved here as a banker. The people who worked here, they have jobs here and they moved here to work in the banking system or whatever. They literally are, yes, Jonas, whatever house I have, I'll have a guest unit for you. Don't worry. I'll have a guest unit. Don't worry. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so people moving here. I talked to one lady who has 3 kids. All the realtors that I've talked to all have 2 kids, 3 kids, most of them in the international school, and they talk about how great the program is. So you're gonna have to pay for international schooling. The public system here isn't, I wouldn't put my kids in the public school system. To be honest, we're strongly considering hiring a teacher in Canada, who is maybe a nanny or something for us, kind of all in one piece. And 5 months a year we might be in Canada, and then 6 months a year they would come with us here, and they would go back and forth, have their Canadian passport or something. That's one of the options, and we would homeschool. And there's some really great online programs. The problem I have with a lot of the schools programs that exist in Canada and the United States is they're designed to train factory workers and office workers. I don't want my kids to be 9-to-5ers. I want them to think like an entrepreneur. So I want to impart on them some of the wisdom that that I've found not from the school system. And a lot of that involves traveling and helping me in the business. And of course they need the fundamentals around reading and writing and math, but most of what I studied in high school was completely irrelevant to my business trajectory. And like I remember doing trigonometry and calculus. Like I've never used calculus and vectors ever. What a waste. And like the careers class was horrible. I spent a whole semester learning about careers. Useless. So many programs that are just horrible in the current school system and a waste of time. So I think we can build our children a better foundation with our own community. And so that's what I plan to do using an online program. So great question. But there's a great international school. It's fairly expensive, like $10,000 a year for your kid, but it is pretty well, revered. We talked to a realtor who was actually a teacher at that school, and she spoke very highly of it. I had an hour conversation with her just about her experience with that school. Very expensive. She ended up teaching at a different school, but for a little bit she taught at that school, and she said that it was, pretty good quality education. Could we do a financial setup if we still live in Canada much of the time with 90 days, still work on some documents and have a place in, say, Florida, so Bahamas appeals with benefits you mentioned? Yeah, so I think the ideal setup for me would be having a place on the West Coast with a dock in, say, West Palm Beach, having a place in the Bahamas, and then just going and visiting family back in Canada when I want to go home. And then maybe squeezing in Europe or a few other places along the way. But the synergy of being able to go from literally having two houses, you can have a second house, like a cottage or a vacation house in Florida, and have an address there and whatever, and then Airbnb it when you're not there, but have the ability to drive your boat literally from your dock in the Bahamas on a clear day in 2 hours. So you just drive across to your boat and go home for the weekend, you know what I mean? And whatever, like you go back and forth. That synergy I think is huge. And that's a big factor of why I chose this island and why I chose the Bahamas. So I think you'd find the same thing if you want those first world amenities. There is golf here on the island. There are 2 golf courses, and one of them is pretty decent. Well, of course, it's not a first world country. It doesn't have those first world amenities, so it depends on what you're looking for. Thankfully, there's Starlink, and that's a good backup internet. I've mentioned SolSox. I've mentioned hurricanes several times. I would never be here during hurricane season. Insurance covers any damages and then some, so it's profitable if a hurricane were to happen. And a lot of the properties we've been looking at are protected in certain areas by the coral reef, so the large waves don't come into shore. And these properties are 25 and 30 years old with the original roof. What does that say? When they're nicely finished inside, you can see the original roof is still on there. That says a lot, right, about having many severe hurricanes through this area and nothing. There's certain areas and pockets that are, if the house has survived 30, 40 years already with, never having any major issues. And they're all concrete built too, and you get hurricane windows and doors and whatnot, so. Okay, I got time for one more question maybe. I'm gonna try to pick one. The super chat, thank you again. So many super chats coming in tonight. So Fred says he knows people who spent time there. There was lots of petty crime, slow and unreliable work and labor. Have you heard this? So yeah, I've heard that certain sectors have, in general, the best way for labor is job price, especially in the construction field. I've heard that job price is the best way to do it. So if they take a week to do it, or they do it in 2 days, it's the same thing. So that's not an issue, but labor is affordable overall, especially when you compare it to in Canada. The other part is safety. For sure, like any other place, there's gonna be safety concerns with, pickpocketing as an example, especially in the capital in Nassau. Here less, but for sure it's possible. You still gotta be careful. Like I wouldn't, walk around in London, Ontario, or in Toronto in a bad area in the evening, right? The same thing is here, like in the nicer gated communities or, near the beach, pretty much all the places near the beach, really well done, nice houses, good quality, both local and international people. And I didn't feel, the same danger level, right? I think that's an important piece. Like you're not gonna wanna, walk in the wrong area of town at night, obviously. But yeah, I mean, in general, good points, Fred. There's, I think there's probably less violent crime than Toronto for sure on this island. So it depends what you're looking for, but it's gonna come with any second or third world nation. I feel like the Bahamas was relatively safe, specifically on the family islands and on Freeport, when compared to some of the other tax havens I was looking at in the Caribbean. There was just, anyway, so. It's here and be fine, dude. Like, anyway, thank you for trolling me. William says, good evening, Mike. Please look at shorting some weak stuff like AMC or Nicola. My advice isn't to have everything long in this environment. Man, I'd love to visit Bahamas in the next year. But William, if I'm down, be happy to use the guest suite to host you. But or if I even have some Airbnbs or whatever, we can work out a deal. But yeah, I don't know. For me right now, the next large up day, I'll probably insure on margin 35% of my portfolio with VIX. So I'll probably buy VIX calls and sell VIX puts to pay for the VIX calls. So that would be the strategy I'll do to protect against a downside pullback. Yeah, it could be worse. It's already pretty bad. But a year from now, 2 years from now, it's not gonna matter, right? Like I can lock in these tax gains now, and then when it recovers, which it will, I'm holding large quality companies that are gonna be just fine. I want you to remember this. The key is not to get emotional and not to close out positions for huge losses now and just wait. I think it's probably better if you're already in it and you're already losing, to just hold. Just hold the line and wait. Same is true for crypto, to be honest, right now. I think that it's more of a buying opportunity right now than a selling opportunity. Is there a Bahamas MLS? Yes, the Bahamas MLS. You can check out all the different stuff on there. Now that I say this, there's gonna be like 100 different people watching. There's gonna be 1,000 people watching this playback, and 500 of you guys are gonna go on the MLS and snack up all the properties, but that's all right. I'd rather have a bunch of Canadians in an awesome environment going than trying to be greedy about a few deals. Like, there's enough to go around, and there's so much land here still to build and develop, and honestly, we need the people to be here, so I hope everyone joins. Harriet says, what would be your advice to be to a 25-year-old working in Toronto, only investing in the stock market and renting? Should they continue doing that or buy a house hack, even with inflated prices? So Harriet, personally, I'm very bearish on the Toronto market in the next 3 to 5 years. So I think there's gonna be an opportunity when interest rates rise, give it 6 months after the interest rates rise, there'll be opportunities to buy at 10, 20% discounts. So I don't think buying right now is a good idea. Just my personal opinion. Who knows what can happen? I think that if you got a cheap rental accommodation right now and you're investing all the difference, you'll be doing great. The markets are gonna allow you to, over the long term, probably with a little bit of leverage and interactive brokers, outpace the performance of the housing market in the next 5-10 years in Canada. I could be wrong, like the last 5 years have been insane, and maybe we have 2 more years of insanity. I don't think that's gonna be the case. I think that rising interest rates are going to drive prices down. I think the recovery after the pandemic is gonna be really rough for Canada specifically. So I'm not as bullish, but I don't see a big crash happening either. I see maybe a small pullback and then a period of flatness. So that's my outlook. Take with it what you want. I'm trying to pick out one more question with the Bahamas, and that's it. So Dr. S says, so I could spend the rest of my 275 days in Canada and still be a tax resident in the Bahamas? No. So the first part of your question is, you can spend up to 275 days abroad, but you cannot spend more than 183 days in any one country. So you've got to stay out of Canada, or Canada's going to deem you a resident of Canada. If they see you still have your primary residence, you're living there in Canada, they're going to want to tax you on your income worldwide. So you got to sell off your house, you got to declare that you're no longer a resident there, file an exit return, and not be living in Canada. You can still visit Canada up to 6 months, just less 6 months a year. So you can spend 5.5 months in Canada, and then a couple of months in Florida or something, and then a couple of months in the Bahamas, and get to your total 12 months. You have to be in the Bahamas at least 90 days, so that's the requirement. The Cayman Islands, interestingly, has you can leave for up to 90 days. They have you can't really leave. So it's much more flexible here, and much better, in my opinion. Even if you're not gonna move here, I think there's a huge opportunity specifically around, just offshore banking here and setting up a corporation here. Having corporations centered in the Bahamas really gives you a lot of flexibility to do business in other countries and have holdings in different countries, and maybe even owning US Corps with your Bahama Corp, right? There's a reason that there are more corporations here than there are people. There's a reason it's the second largest industry in the Bahamas is the offshore banking, financial banking system. Most of the people doing business and setting up their pharmaceutical companies here, and a lot of publicly traded companies have headquartered here and set up operations at least and offshore accounts here in the Bahamas for a reason, right? So even if you don't want to live here, it's still a place you should come check out. You should look into the tax ramifications of opening up a business and centering your business here, potentially. So lots of opportunities. I think there's too many questions. I can't get through all these. There's no way. I'll pick one more. There's so many. I'm trying to pick a good one. 6 months have to be continuous in the Bahamas? No. I answered this question already, pretty much about the Ontario school system in comparison. Okay, good question. This is a good one. This will be the last one I'll do tonight. Love the content. Thank you. Appreciate the comments saying you love the content. I'm glad tonight. So, comparing the Puerto Rico to the Bahamas. Puerto Rico is very interesting, actually. It was my number 2 choice after the Bahamas. So, why the Bahamas over the Puerto Rico? One, I think the fundamentals of the economy long-term in the Bahamas are better. The crypto space is just going to be better here. Business opportunity better here. Tax environment slightly better here, actually, for operating a business. The passive income piece, though, if you're investing in stocks, interesting piece. If you just have a stock portfolio, Puerto Rico is actually more interesting than the Bahamas if you don't care about first world nation of like being close to Florida by boat or plane. Like if you just wanted to live 12 months a year in the Bahamas versus 12 months a year in Puerto Rico is actually better. It's a better choice if you didn't want to travel a lot, because Puerto Rico's real estate prices are crushed. The hurricanes also crushed them. They're really far, but you get a US passport, so that's interesting. And there's currently a 20-year exemption on passive income if you move there and you're not a US citizen. So there's some real interesting opportunities for people to move to Puerto Rico and invest in US equities with no withholding tax and pay no capital gains. Zero capital gains, zero dividend income tax. It's actually, if you're investing just in a stock portfolio, more favorable tax climate than anywhere else in the world. There is no other country in the entire world that the IRS gives you a break and has no withholding taxes. You pay zero tax on US equities. That's a unicorn. So Puerto Rico is a real unicorn. The crime in Puerto Rico is very high. The lifestyle isn't as great as the Bahamas, in my opinion. The pace is just different. The primary language, it's because the Bahamas was a territory or like under the British rule, it's based on British laws, the Commonwealth of England, right? So it's based on all the British laws. The primary language is English here. Primary language in Puerto Rico is Spanish, right? So lifestyle-wise, and there are a number of other reasons I chose Bahamas over Puerto Rico. I like the proximity to Florida too, it's really, really nice. But yeah, I mean, Puerto Rico is a great option for those watching. So if you like Puerto Rico, if you speak Spanish and you have entirely a stock portfolio and you're okay with a depreciating stock market, and I think a big thing is that the population is decreasing big time in Puerto Rico, which is crazy. And then the fact that like in 18 years, they may decide that the US government wants to start taxing Puerto Rico again. And if you have a corporation there, you pay 6% tax, and there's payroll taxes. And if you work there, there is tax. So it's, if you just had a stock portfolio and it was all US equities, Puerto Rico is a better option. But I think for a number of other reasons, for most people want to travel and have diverse income, and all this kind of stuff. And that in 18 years from now, Puerto Rico might not be so great. I think that the tax stuff that the US government has put into place there and that they voted in, that might be gone. Whereas I think the Bahamas will continue to operate as a tax haven. So anyway, I'm bullish. Join me on Instagram at Mike Rosehart if you want to follow along for the journey. I'm posting like 10 stories a day, but all the things I'm up to. If you want to join me on the journey, message me. You want to invest with me on this journey, message me. Instagram is the best way to find me. If I missed your question, post it in the comments or send me an Instagram message, and I'll probably in the comments here will be the best place, and I'll try to respond to that as best I possibly can on my downtime. The internet is super spotty in this resort. As we walk around, we lose Wi-Fi connectivity, so doing my best here, but I will try to get through all these questions. And thank you so much to everyone who's watched tonight. We had over 100 people tune in live, and for the 1,000 people watching the playback, smash that like button. If you're at all interested in the Bahamas, reach out to me, and remember, the secret to unlocking wealth through you is 3 levers: spend less, earn more, and maximize returns in the difference. And I think that the Bahamas and little Canada in the Bahamas is really going to be the best opportunity for us entrepreneurs, 6, 7, and 8-figure entrepreneurs, to move here and be able to really enjoy the best quality life and go where you're treated best, as the Nomad Capitalist guy says. He's another guy you should follow, by the way. Thank you, appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week, live, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bye, everyone.